Hello, beloved.
Welcome to the Sacred Sister Podcast,
where we normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane.
In this podcast, we open up dialogue on metaphysical subjects, self-healing tools, expanding consciousness, and deepening awareness.
We're here to support you in co-creating a life full of healing, meaning, and magic.
If you're brand new here, welcome and hello. We're so excited to have you here.
If you want to know more what has come before, Season 1 is great for foundation of spiritual practices. Season 2 is focusing on relationships. Season 3 is featuring conscious entrepreneurs who are spearheading their sacred mission.
And now we are in Season 4, where we're bringing fresh perspective to outdated systems and creating sustainable foundations for the new earth that's birthing. Since it's the season of the Emperor, we're going to be mostly focusing on male voices this season.
And the lineup of the season is fire, so make sure to subscribe if you're not already.
I'm your host, Britt, certified self-inquiry and alignment-based smart flow yoga instructor, self-healing song channel, and personal transformation coach, guiding women to gain radical self-awareness in order to reconnect with their most expressive and vibrant self.
And I'm your host, Hannah, a certified astrologer, ordained priestess, and rebirth coach. And I help women integrate past life and ancestral traumas to give birth to their higher self and manifest their wildest dreams into reality.
We're really grateful that you're here.
And together,
we're here to serve as your
Sacred Sister.
Let's dive in. Hello, sacred beings, and welcome to another episode of Sacred Sister Podcast. When I say the word self-mastery, what do you think of? I'm so excited for this episode we're launching today because this topic is so near and so dear to my heart. Self-mastery is literally like one of the key pillar words of the ground foundation of my own business. And it's my whole approach to the coaching that I do and the ways that I help people transform their lives. Today we're sitting down with Khadaura. And Khadaura is the CEO and founder of naturalBEING, a self-mastery, embodiment, and authentic personal branding company based in Austin. And with that being said, he's also an embodiment and self-mastery coach. And oh my gosh, I feel like I would love to be coached by him. I can only imagine the depths that we would go and the way that he goes about the self-discovery process. In this episode, we traverse so many topics. It was so hard. Like, those of you who are following us on Sacred Sister Podcast over on Instagram know that we post audio grabs and video grabs from these very interviews that we sit down to record. And we don't really talk about just how difficult it can be to sit down and really pull from this interview and choose the juiciest nuggets and bits of wisdom for what we share on our Instagram page. And this episode is just another one of those. One of the ones that I have like 7 audio grabs pulled, and I know that we only want to be really producing 3 or 4 of them max, because it takes a lot of time and energy to be producing all of this. But I hope that that little piece really speaks to the wisdom that today's guest has to offer in the realm of self-mastery and radical embodiment. I think that some of these terms can get glossed over in the quote-unquote spiritual community, and Khadaura actually has a lot to say about using the word spiritual and why it didn't resonate for him, and what he started using instead. How these pieces are actually really natural parts of ourselves, and he chose to step away from putting that word spiritual like on a pedestal that makes people see you or makes you want people to see you in a different way, and how reducing our like amazing extrasensory abilities and our multidimensionality down to just using the word natural really helps us ground into and feel into just how magnanimous our powers are if we really allow ourselves to sink into it, and to sink into the belief that we're powerful and that we are sovereign beings and that we have the ability to discover ourselves again and again and again and again, layer by layer by layer. Natural being helps people embody their natural state of being, or their Zen, by aligning their human journey, their soul's spark, and their spirit's flow with grace, joy, and ease. The key to this process is understanding who we are inside, regulating our emotions, who the people are around us, and the impact that we have on those that come into contact with our presence. We go over so much who Khadaura was as a young boy, how his 14 years in the U.S. Army impacted his life a lot, and how his dream for joining the U.S. Army actually stemmed from his childhood in Japan and wanting to be a samurai. He is an absolutely incredible being. I'm so glad that he is doing exactly what he is doing in the world. He really has a potent message here for us all, and has many, many, many years and countries visited, and sitting with mystics and monks in Asia, and shamans in South America, and priestesses in Africa, and holistic healers from over 100 countries. He's accumulated a lot, and we're so grateful that he sat down with us today. I want to go ahead and hop into the human design portion of this intro, keeping it short today. Khadaura is a generator, and we've talked about generators here in this intro segment before. Think of a battery generator. Think of this being. For me, generators have such an earthen energy to them, and you'll really be able to feel into that whenever we get into the interview. Just a slower, more earthen, kapha vibe. It's like that wellspring of knowledge that we're able to go and plug into, but they're there sitting with it, ready to help whoever's willing to reach out, whoever wants to, whoever is looking for the service that he has to offer. So the incarnation cross of Khadaura is the right angle cross of contagion, and this cross carries the energy of desire and to experience what that person desires. He is the one who wants to try new things out, and you're going to hear him say that a couple different times, where he surprises his friends by saying no way, TikTok doesn't own me, and just being willing to step outside of the things that a lot of people consider the very edges of their comfort zones. It seems like Khadaura does this really easily because he's just so aligned with his own sovereignty and his own integrity, and it can take people aback. I feel like when I was just having a little moment of meditation before I sat down to record this intro, I was thinking of who is this energy? Who is this being? And I just saw Khadaura walking around the fields of a garden that was just freshly being sown with seeds. And he's just chilling in his hoodie, walking up and down the rows, just tossing seeds out. And we talk about how a lot of us are here to be catalysts. We're here to be of service, and we're here to just offer the things that are on our hearts. And we have no idea the way that what we're offering to the world is going to impact, how it's going to impact other people, and whether or not that one sentence that we didn't know whether we should say or not is actually going to be the catalyst that winds up changing someone's entire trajectory and paradigm in this life. So some of us are here to plant those seeds and be of service in that way. And I truly feel like Khadaura is one of those really beautiful beings who does that in a way that only he can. It's so lovely to witness. And I hope that you really enjoy this episode. Let's hop over to Hannah's astrology segment, and then we'll hop into the interview. And before we hop into that segment, I want to let you know that Sacred Sister Podcast has officially started a community building Patreon page. So what this means is that Hannah and I are really excited about expanding the Sacred Sister Podcast community. We know that so many sacred beings are listening to this podcast, and we know that y'all want to be connecting with one another as well. If you are feeling a resonant call inside of you that you want to be sitting with us on a deeper level and opening discussion with other sacred beings just like yourself who are interested in all these beautiful topics that we traverse, go over to Patreon, type in Sacred Sister Podcast, and for only $5 a month, you can join our growing community and gain access to the video commentary that Hannah and I sit down after each and every interview in this season. We open up dialogue, share more personal stories, and open dialogue with you, the community, our sacred sisters, our sacred beings who are listening to this. We so appreciate you, and we hope to see you over there. Let's head into Hannah's segment. See you soon.
Hello, Sacred Being, and welcome to the Inner Blueprint section. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to look into Khadaura's astrology chart and see what kind of archetypes are prominent within his inner blueprint and how does he express them outwardly. And you will notice some of those things during the interview as well. So it's a lot of fun to look into the inner blueprints of our guests because we can always understand where they're coming from and why they're seeing the world the way that they do and how they're being of service to the world. So we're going to keep this short. This is just going to be a 5-minute inner blueprint reading. Obviously, there is so much more to read into a chart, but we want to keep this condensed so that we can go into the interview and we're not talking too much beforehand. So let's get started. Khadaura's sun is in Aquarius in the 3rd house. The 3rd house is the house of Gemini, and his sun is also conjunct Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini. So we have a lot of those Aquarius and Gemini archetypes mixed together in his sun. And so let's dive deeper into that. What does that mean? Aquarius archetype is the archetype of the rebel, the innovator, and the free spirit. And the 3rd house is ruled by Gemini, which is the archetype of the messenger, the student, and the jester at the same time. So Khadaura's mind is able to grasp out-of-the-world concepts. He has an out-of-the-box way of thinking, and he's able to receive insights and ideas that look at the world from a different angle. And he is a great communicator who is able to make his content relatable and lighthearted. His moon is in the 12th house in Sagittarius. And that's also his rising sign, by the way, which is also conjunct Uranus. Uranus rules Aquarius. So again, we have that Aquarius energy there. But also with Sagittarius, he's the explorer, the teacher, and the adventurer. He's not afraid to expand his horizons and see things from a new perspective. And he also loves to coach and to teach and to guide others to explore their own inner realms. And the way that he does that with his Jupiter, his chart ruler, being in the 2nd house of Taurus, again, the way he brings those concepts into reality is by making them mundane, by bringing them into the natural way of being. With his moon, he is incredibly intuitive and compassionate and understands that we are all one in the deepest level. Here's another interesting thing. His moon shows his past and his family and where he comes from. His moon being in Sagittarius in the 12th house shows that he, as a child, was naturally inclined to understand spiritual concepts, and he was surrounded by mysticism and spiritual teachers that were able to guide him and support him in developing his own way of understanding the world. And then, interestingly enough, he has Saturn right there on his south node. And Saturn, and I'm mentioning that in the episode because I'm saying, wow, military is so Capricorn energy. Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn is all about discipline and focus. So his south node is really in that place of leadership and sacrificing himself in service to other people. His South Node is in Scorpio in the 12th house, conjunct that Saturn, and that's where the spiritual warrior comes in. And interestingly enough, and he's going to tell us about this in the episode, his wish when he was a child and he really learned about mysticism and spirituality, he really wanted to be a samurai, which is such a, spiritual warrior, literally. And it has a lot to do with discipline and focus and leadership and self-mastery, which is all that Saturn theme. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised with his Saturn being conjunct his South Node that he indeed was a samurai in his past life, and he really remembered those gifts that he was receiving from that. And when he found out that there are no samurais anymore in this lifetime, in this modern age, he decided to join the military, which is like the modern way of bringing in that Saturn energy and really diving into that focus and discipline and accountability and self-mastery on a more grounded, mundane level. And so that's what he did. And it's so fascinating because through that time, he went through a lot of suffering. It is all in the house of, in the 12th house of suffering, mental illnesses. He suffered from PTSD throughout his time, but also at the same time, he was able to integrate those traumas from the past and heal himself. And through that healing, he was then able to find a way to be of service to others with his North Node in Taurus in the 6th house of service, really integrating those traumas from the past, from his past lives even, and manifesting that as his dream way of being of service to other people and helping them heal from their own inner sufferings and subconscious habits and bring that into that mundane, practical, and natural way of being. So he was bringing that so beautifully into his soul's path, into his life, into his career. And so I'm really excited for you to listen to this interview. And yeah, if this is something that you're interested to experience yourself, learning about your own inner blueprint, it is absolutely amazing and life-changing to know about our inner archetypes and understand why we're feeling the way we are. And also, what is our purpose in this lifetime? What is our soul's path? So you can go to my website, hannahchristensen.com, and you can use the code SACREDSIS, and you get a special discount as our beloved sacred being who is listening to this podcast. So we thank you so much for being here with us. And also, I want to mention this too. If you've been feeling really inspired or empowered or just feeling the support and love from Sacred Sister Podcast, we are so happy to receive any feedback. You can write us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. And also, if you are interested in just having a more one-on-one experience with us, we have our Patreon that Britt was mentioning, and also we have an Instagram. The Instagram is called @SacredSisterPodcast, and that's where you can also send us direct messages, and you can always get beautiful posts almost each day that we're posting that is really helping you to normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane on a regular basis in your everyday life. So follow us on there if you haven't already, and now we're going to go into the beautiful meditation that Khadaura is guiding us through. And so relax and enjoy.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Fun risings, natural beings of love. It is like Khadaura, and we're going to start this off by just grounding and allowing ourselves to be present in this unconditional time, this moment of just being. And in doing so, I invite you all to allow yourself to just feel your energy in your heart, understanding that your heart is a magnet and your magnet has vibrations. I invite you to feel those vibrations in your bones, to feel that vibration in your muscles. Allow it to move through your veins, your tendons, your ligaments, and all the way out through your skin as you begin to connect more and more in this moment with the earth, with the universe, understanding that even though you are still right now, that when you move, when you step, every step is you sending an electronic charge from your feet into the earth. Every time you move your arms, you're sending that energy out into the aether, the universe. So you're allowing yourself to receive, you're allowing yourself to let go, knowing that everything you do is in this divine flow of just being in alignment. And as you're just naturally breathing and allowing yourself to harness all of this energy within, you can expand with each breath, you can contract, you can reach different parts of the world, the universe, just by allowing it to be your intention, allowing it to be your intent for the moment, allowing your attention to be focused on you, knowing that you are connected. And then as we take one more last deep breath in together, I invite you to hold it, to reprogram your entire nervous system to just experience love and joy with ease, and exhale. And as you start to move your toes and your fingers and connect even deeper to that magnetic vibration, I invite you to open your eyes and just know that we are all here present together. And I thank you for joining me on that small journey.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes. So
I
I
really
missed
needed that.
beautiful. I missed it because I realized I don't have my headphones. So I had to grab them, and I just the moment I got back, you're like, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'm like, oh no.
Replay.
We just
And I have
reprogrammed our entire being, Hannah.
I have it on the replay. Okay, cool. Well, thank you and welcome, Khadaura. We're so excited to have you here. This is going to be such a fun and transforming episode. I feel like so powerful, talking about self-mastery and embodiment and really standing up for our truth and having that accountability for our actions. And so we're going to go deeper into your life story, but actually before we started the interview, you were telling us that you were just watching the movie Seaspiracy, right? Is that
Seaspiracy.
Seaspiracy. And yeah, and I feel like I want to pick that conversation up because that was just so good and it was so relevant. So if you want to touch on that again, what you've learned from it and what happened to you afterwards when you really connected with Gaia.
Yes, so I was recommended by a friend, Jessica Zweig, to watch Seaspiracy, and I thought, I have time, let's dive into it. Didn't know what I was getting into, and it really starts out with these amazing beings wanting to understand more about the whaling industry. And as they started to understand more about whales, they started learning more about dolphins and more about fish. And then it was like the aspect of plastic being that there's such this huge focus on using less straws that they realized the straws aren't the problem. One of the bigger problems is the fishing nets. So they started going to the NGOs and they're like, how come none of you are talking about the fishing industry? And as you dive deeper, they found out that the fishing industries are kind of working hand in hand and under the same organizations as some of the plastic industries. So it's like, wow. So they started looking at sustainability and how the use of these labels isn't actually working. Like these labels are saying these are dolphin safe or these are sustainable ways of doing things, and there's no one actually regulating. You know, they admit that some people were paid off. So I was like, wow, okay, so none of this stuff is actually sustainable or what it says. And they ended up starting to find out about a lot of the industry that's in Thailand comes from like slavery labor. So you have all these people on these boats. You start finding out how a lot of countries are suffering because of all the fish. You even find out that what's been done where they're scraping along the bottom of the ocean is enough to cover most of the larger countries in Europe and other parts of the world. Like that's how much is being cleared every year. So it just really had a huge impact where I was like, I actually, now that I know this, being that I am someone that is very big on integrity and embodying my truth, I was like, I personally can no longer, contribute to fishing, the fishing industry. And it's like so much money goes to the fishing industry. And they were even saying that some of the places that are sustainable, in order to feed those fish, they have to kill more fish. So it's like, that's not really helping at all. So as I took that in, was like standing with myself and just being like, Gaia, I apologize for, what I've done, not to shame myself. I just grounded myself really deeply, and I went to take in a breath through my nose or my mouth, and air went in through my ear, and then air went out of my ear. And I was like, wow. So I went and Googled it and realized that uh, based on our bodies, we have an inner ear and a middle ear. And as land beings, we're the only ones with middle ears. And that was developed to actually breathe through our ears. So they were talking about some runners working on learning to breathe in and out of your ear. And today I've decided that's something I'm going to start practicing and working on. If that is me being a natural being, because my whole mentality since this year is being more of a natural being, not being a human being, not having to be a spiritual being, not being an energetic being, but just allowing everything to be natural and to not put it on these higher levels of something like their pedestals, because I believe all these things are natural. So it's been a beautiful journey this morning so far. So I'm glad to be here with you both and all of you.
Yes. I love that so much. And I think it's so relevant that you were watching this right before, even though you were saying, it was really hard to come to that conclusion and see it all, how much we have negatively influenced Mother Gaia. But I also love how you embodied her afterwards and really felt into that Gaia energy. And she's speaking through us through different ways, and she's guiding us. And I love that about the ear, breathing through the ear. I have never heard of that.
Mhm.
That's super cool. I feel like it's so relevant too when you were saying how the labels that are being put onto the products do not show the real truth. And I feel like that's so much about accountability and self-mastery that we're going to be talking about in this episode, and how important that is, because asking ourselves, what kind of a label am I putting onto myself, on my packaging, on my marketing, on who I am, on my brand, my business, my life, my relationship maybe, and how much of that is actually truth and grounded in truth. Yeah, we're going to dive
Topic.
into
It's a deep topic. Yeah, something that was really hitting home for me, and why I'm really grateful that we're circling back on this topic, is because we were talking about, Hannah, what's it called? The documentary that you had just recently seen. And I love intaking docuseries and documentaries. Plandemic. And I haven't seen that one either, but it's like this really beautiful ability, now tying astrology into it with the Aquarian age that we're heading into, and really acknowledging the 11th house ruler and the way that we're able to source so much information through the internet now, and how we're able to spread information. And this is how consciousness is rising so rapidly. And also, as highly as we rise, obviously there's going to be other equally as nefarious things going on. But for me, at least, it's such a sigh and a breath of relief, because now, tying back into the topic of self-mastery and radical authentic embodiment, is the more that we're able to see the complexities between so many different industries, so many different veils that are being lifted, that we're gaining awareness over.
I think, and I am projecting into the next few years, that the conversations begin coming forward where we begin saying, oh, let's look at all this complexity. You understand all the complexity now that's going on in the unseen realms of the systems that are so prevalent. Can we also begin turning the eyes inward and totally, without any shadow of a doubt, acknowledge the complexities that are inside of ourselves that are just as vast, just as universally grand. It's the most exciting topic for me, this topic of embodiment and self-mastery. And I'm really curious to know, Khadaura, like, what is self-mastery and what is embodiment for you? Like, can you really ground it down for anyone who maybe this is a brand new concept? I haven't seen the word self-mastery put together so much in the external realm. So running into you, it's just so beautiful having you on the podcast today and being able to really give you this platform and ask you to really expand on what this concept means to you in your life and the vibrancy that it has for you.
I would say, so for me, and understanding the term self-mastery, because I grew up in Japan in my preteen and teenage years. And someone that is a master is someone that is a habitual practitioner. So as you practice things more and more, you become a master of it. So an example I will give people that comes up a lot is people when they feel triggered. And that I know that I can't trigger someone, like being triggered is a choice, but for the sake of the usage of the word. So it's like, if I feel triggered about something, I get to ask myself and go inward, like you were saying, and figure out, why is this actually getting to me? Why does this bother me? And it's like, as I go deeper, I'm like, it's got nothing to do with the other person. There's something in me that I get to work on. And as I start to work on that more and more, I understand that those triggers don't actually ever go away, because it's like, I have the trigger, and then as you go up a level, something else happens, and then you get to work on that, and you go up higher, get to work on that. So the more you start practicing doing it, if you look back at 5 or 10 years ago, maybe when you were triggered by something, it could take you a day, a week, a month to get over it. Whereas now, when it happens, you've become the master. When you're like, meh, doesn't serve the best and highest version of myself, not going to let it bother me. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where I've learned to master like my own mind, and understanding that I accept accountability and responsibility for everything that's going on in my life. So if I'm aware of it and it's happening, I know that everything external to me doesn't actually control me. I choose to feel the way that I feel. I choose to do the things that I do. And when I bring embodiment into it, it's like, once I know that, it's one, understanding and being aware of myself. Two, it's being aware of the people that are around me. Three, it's being aware of how I regulate myself based on myself and the people around me. And then finally, the impact I have on other people. And I was telling some friends, I was like, the reason why I'm so cautious about the words and the language that I use is because I was working with someone, and they were telling me that someone said something to them today, and it was something that triggered something from 20 years ago. So I thought to myself, if 20 years ago your parent said something to you and it's still bothering you, if someone said something to you now, that could actually stay with you for another 20 years. So it's like, the things I say to people today could affect them for the next 20 plus years. And I was like, I don't want to be that type of person. I'm adding to the things that they're still dealing with. So that's where I just learned to be really mindful of the words I say, because I really don't want to. And I went back and apologized to people in the past, just so that I could clear it for myself. Not that I needed the forgiveness, because for me, forgiveness is interpersonal. So I was like, if I'm going to embody this, I need to make sure that I'm doing the same thing, so that I'm just not telling other people to do it, and I haven't actually experienced it myself. So we play a large role in our lives and the lives of people around us. And I believe someone that has learned to master themselves is constantly practicing. So you're always the master and the student at the same time.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. And I love that you just mentioned this about the wound or the trigger that was triggering the wound from that person from 20 years ago. And I just talked to one of my clients yesterday about it, how we have even traumas from past lives that are still influencing us now, and from our ancestral lineage too, that is like being taken on through us, also the gifts and the beautiful things from it, obviously too, but we also bring in traumas and the wounds, and they can trigger us until we like look into them and integrate them and really layer by layer. I love how you were saying, there's never going to be a place where you're 100% healed and nothing is ever going to trigger you. And that's not the point either, because that's life. That's why we're here. It's also beautiful. But the way that we're working through it shifts. And just as you were saying, like it's quicker, it's easier. It doesn't affect us mentally as much, or emotionally, spiritually, physically, even in our health. And it makes it a lot easier when we become aware that certain things that trigger us as kids, and even like if someone says something, don't be bossy, for example, or don't be so loud, or don't be so whiny, it might, for some kids that don't have a trauma in that, it might just like be falling off, and they're like, I don't care. Like, I mean, I don't know what people would tell me before in my past. I don't take on all the bad stuff that people would tell about me, but I do take on the things, or I have taken on the things in the past where I already have a wound inside of me and a trauma. And I realized, okay, cool, that comes from past lives where I wasn't allowed to speak up, like a past life where I was in Great Britain, where I had this iron mask that they would put on women that would study and would share their knowledge, and it wasn't allowed for women to speak up, so they would put this iron mask on them. And I would still have this, like, even the memory of it, because I had really strong TMJ, so really strong thing, like I really felt that helmet and that mask on me. And so anybody that would tell me to stop talking or not being so loud, it would trigger me, because I would remember that trauma from my past life, and then all the traumas and all the little triggers that have come up through my childhood, because we often repeat what we've learned already, what's inside our DNA, So I think it's such a beautiful way of self-mastery, and look at it from that perspective when we see, okay, I can't control other people's actions, but I can control my own reactions to it. And when I know who I am, and that's where astrology helped me a lot, and past life regression helped me a lot through like understanding, okay, who am I and what is my soul? What have I come to learn about here? It makes a lot more sense why we get triggered about certain things and other things we don't even care about. And that's when
Powerful
we can
blueprints.
grow.
Yeah, I really love the grounded approach that we have in talking about this, Khadaura, as you were saying, this realm, this 3D reality that we're accustomed to, and then Hannah bringing in the past life associations and the ancestral lineage and the generational trauma. I can get myself so lost in these like mental loops where it's even hard for me to communicate outward about this, because in my mind it's like, it's so simple. Like when we give the time, space, energy to really do the deep dive with endless curiosity and tireless faith and devotion, that we are like that there is a greater depth, that there is a greater capacity to feel purposed in life, to feel that we're living life on purpose. Because the like general consensus, yes, things are awakening, but it can still be very confusing, because we're having these internal experiences as conscious humans who are really awakening to the vastness of our interior landscapes. And it can be so hard to, I guess it's just my own struggle, because I get lost in these internal loops, because I'm like, oh my gosh, if everyone just knew all of this stuff, it would be so helpful. And I guess I just need to, I'm discovering something as I'm saying right now, just trusting that the people that are awakening to it are awakening to it in their own time, because I think that I feel like I need to convince people, or like come with the whole bevy of material to show them about this, that, and the other thing. And I think it really does me a disservice in my life.
It's exhausting
It,
too.
it
Yeah,
is.
because it's like we're dragging them out of the cave to see the light, and then they're like, "Oh, it's way too bright. I don't like it." It doesn't work that way. They have to be already in the moment where, like, you know what, let me see, let me want to see the light,
The
the
thirst.
truth to it.
Yeah. I learned to just keep sharing. I used to spend so much time trying to convince people. And then I learned that like some of us are just catalysts. And a catalyst doesn't know when it's gonna cause the chain reaction inside of someone. So Spirit was like, just keep sharing. Like, don't worry about who you believe it's supposed to be. Like, especially when it's like your loved ones and close ones. Like a part of me wanted them. Like, I want you to go with me because you're here. And I had to learn to let that go. And it's like, you know what? You're on your own journey, just like I've been on my own journey. So as I started to just speak my truths more and more and like fully embody all of it, that's when I started to get people that were like, oh my goodness, like I thought I was the only one that thought that. And I'm like, oh wow, I used to think that way too. So I learned just keep sharing. And as we share, we get to become those catalysts because their spirit's going to pick up on it way before they do. And maybe even it's just the planting of the seed as well. I've told a lot of the people I work with and friends, and it's like, because I'm noticing in this social media world of influencers, there'll be someone that's like, oh, I only got, 5 comments and like 12 likes, and there were only 3 people watching my live. And I'm like, that's awesome. And they're like, what? I was like, 3 people watching your live? As my coach would say, like, imagine if those 3 people were in your room. That's a lot of people to be conversing about something. Those 5 people that liked what you were saying, it resonated with them. Like, that's 5 people versus nobody. You impacted 5 people today on a post, 3 people in a live. You've impacted the lives of 8 people. And these are 8 people that could potentially have spent the next 5 years of their life feeling utterly alone. And maybe they no longer feel alone just because you said something today. And if it doesn't impact them now, the seed was planted. One of my best friends admitted in a clubhouse room that for the last 4 years, he's literally just given me so much crud about everything I post. I'll share something spiritual or natural, and he'll write some snide remark about it. He's been doing it for like 4 straight years. And then it's just clicked for him now. And he's like, I want to say, I'm sorry. And thank you because you planted the seed. So it's easier for me to understand it now.
Yeah.
So just know that everything you say and share, it will become easier for them to process it when they are ready. Because now they have the knowledge spirits, like, this, and they're like, oh my goodness, Hannah and Brittany, they were talking about this 4 years ago. Like now they have some grasp of it. So they're not like out in the wind in like the void of darkness.
So beautifully said. And I think that was such an important piece too with the 3 people show up to the live, or just 12 people post like your post, because I'll be honest, I get caught up in that too at times when I like really put a lot of time and effort into something and I put it out and then I don't get the response that I was think it's gonna get, and I was like, what's going on? But I have to, my husband is actually the one too that says, oh, that's awesome, 10 people, or whatever it is, like just like focusing on that and just seeing it like, okay, what if they are in the room and with you? Because like being in that online realm, and Britt was just saying that you have been like seeing a lot of people that just buy followers and buy likes just to not have to feel that way and to put a label on them to look a certain way and look more successful, but then it's not actually rooted in truth. And then we have to always think about, okay, what are going to be the consequences of that when we are not rooted in truth? Like last time I did a moon goddess circle and one person was showing up, and I love her and she's great and it was a lot of fun. But at first there was my ego coming up that was like, wow, it was just one person showing up. Why is that? And then I just felt into it and I was like, you know what? I remember there was, and I didn't remember who it was, but there was like a speaker that was talking about how, and he's now super, like he's filling up stadiums of people. And he was talking about how first when he started, he had like 3 people sitting there. And when he did like a conference, and just like so little people were interested in what he was doing. And then he just continued doing what he was doing. And at some point, like more and more people resonated with it and realized, oh, wow, this is really good stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm not doing it for necessarily to please other people. I was just like, this is my mission, I just have to do it. And I love how you were saying that, because it's so important that we just come back to that truth, because we can get stuck in that outward appearance of like, oh my gosh, how does that look like for other people now, if they see that's just a few likes, or what is my popularity has to do with the worth of myself, or with the value of my message. But ultimately it doesn't matter, just as you were saying, like, just keep putting the things out and following those breadcrumbs wherever it takes us. And then at some point people are going to go back and be like, this is the thing. Like for me, I have this book from the 70s. It was written in the 70s. It was called The Astrology for the Aquarian Age. And that was the catalyst for me to get into astrology, because I forgot her name now. I forgot her. I always talk about this book and I never mentioned the author of it. Makes me like, okay, I have to figure out her name and remember her name. But Cindy, I feel like her name is Cindy Lother. But anyway, I'll add the book into the description because she deserves it. So she wrote this book in the 70s and I'm just reading it, and she says, if anyone reads this, I hope that this inspires you to bring astrology back into this modern age, because it's really important for the age of Aquarius. And I felt like she was talking to me. And that was, 30 years later when I read that. And so just like knowing the value of what we're putting out, it's going to stay, it's going to be there, and someone's going to see it, and it's going to be a catalyst. So when it's rooted in truth,
Yeah, to me, it's all about being of service.
Yeah.
And that was like something I definitely started learning in the last 2 years. So last year in May, I was like, I want to do something different and go in another space on social media. So I jumped in TikTok at like the end of May, and everyone was like, oh, TikTok is for kids. It's not going to work out. Like, it's just kids dancing. And I'm like, it's got to be a way for me to jump in there. So I like was just putting out mental health stuff. And I had a video where I danced and put out mental health stuff that blew up and went viral. And it brought me to like 5,000 followers in like 2 weeks. And because of that, I could go live. So I started going live like every day for 2 months. And I think when I first started going live, I had like 30 people, which in the TikTok world isn't a lot when you're looking at like these big influencers that have like 900, 1,000 or something. And I was like, don't care. And like every time I jump on the live, I go live on TikTok, and I had another phone to go live on Twitch. And I'd be like, for the 5 people on Twitch, I love you. For the 30 people on TikTok, I love you too. And I would just shotgun answers about mental health and stuff every day. Literally after like 30 days of doing that at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every day, I had amassed about like 150,000 followers on TikTok. And then within 5 months, I was at over 200,000 followers. I got verified by TikTok, was one of their partners. And I remember being on the thing one day and someone was like, oh, and I was like, hey, Audrey, I just want to give you a shout out. And I want to give a shout out to the 30 of you that were here and the 5 of you that were always on Twitch. And it's like, as they would say something, I would call them out because I didn't follow too many people. And somebody was like, thank you for not forgetting about us. And I was like, nope. I was like, I remember when it was just the 30 of us on here for a straight month. I was like, you all showed up 7 a.m. every single morning. You were loyal. I'm always here for you. Even ran like a small mini program for them that was like way below what I would normally charge, but it was for them. I was like, I'm going to run this month coaching program just for you all to say thank you. Now, what happens is I think a lot of people want to get to that phase where they're like verified and like all those thousands of followers. And I noticed that things change because people have expectations of you now. And when I wasn't going live as often, people were upset. They were like, you didn't go live. I had a question for you. And I was like, people don't control me. So I just like pulled away from TikTok for like 2 months. And my friend was like, seriously? I was like, TikTok doesn't own me. And I think that was a huge shift for my friends to see that you could do that. I said, I don't care what people think or what they expect of me. At the end of the day, I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. I was like, I felt overwhelmed by like the influx of messages and what people were wanting from me. And I was like, hey, everyone, I'm taking a break. I'm gonna step back. I won't be going live as much. And I lost probably like 10,000 followers and I wasn't getting as many views. And I started posting again. And my friend was like, how does it feel to be verified and not have that many comments or views? I'm like, doesn't feel like anything. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, those 10 people that were like, that video resonated, those are the 10 people that I'm here to work with. I'm just being of service. If the universe wanted 100,000 people to see the video, they'd see it. If only 10 saw it, then those are the only 10 that are meant to see it. And I'm going to support them and respond to the comments and just be in this moment. Like, unconditional time is so powerful. Unconditional love is powerful. And I'm not going to do something because other people want me to, because that takes me out of being a sovereign being.
Oh gosh, I feel like this is such a profound topic to be talking on, because I think that a lot of us deal with this on a scale. I know in my own experience, when I like approaching social media from a content creator space that's like, okay, cool, I'm putting out information. When you see the train start moving and you see the engagement rising, you know it's reaching more people, you like feel the resonance at higher and higher scales, it becomes an addiction. It can become an addiction. And this is why I'm like almost at 3 weeks into this social media cleanse where I deleted Instagram and Facebook from my phone, and I haven't been getting on it at all. And it's so nice to take a step back and to really look at the relationship that you have with social media. I think it's really fascinating that we don't talk about this a lot, I think, in the mainstream, and talk about how necessary these cleanses are, and how, like, what our relationship looks like with our phones, and how just normalized it is to be super, 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 super addicted to your devices, checking your phone before you even set your feet on the ground in the morning. This is something that I still struggle with to this day, even though I'm only checking my email at this point. But it can just be another one of those things that it's so fascinating to really witness, and then to take a step back and ask the questions to yourself, like, am I making these choices? Are these automatic programs that are going on inside of my head? And if so, how long have they been happening? What is the meaning of their function? Do they really benefit me in the long term? Just asking these deeper questions. And I feel like I'm hopeful that a lot more people are choosing to pull back and choosing to take that more conscious approach to their own lives. And again, it's happening with the people that it needs to in the moment. I think that you can maybe not really see the value in it until you really dive in my experience. Because I hadn't really taken breaks from social media until I started going to this women's gathering called Spirit Weavers. I talk about it. We featured guests from facilitators from Spirit Weavers on this podcast. But going up there and having 5 days in an old growth forest in Southern Oregon, where you basically don't have service, and really witnessing turning your phone off and being like, ooh, noticing, if little anxieties are coming up in the beginnings of conversations with people you've never met before, and how quickly we're like, ooh, like if we feel weird because we're like, oh, I don't have my phone on me and I don't have service out here, like it can really help you raise this really, really radically raw and revealing mirror up to your face that I feel like I never had awareness over. And it really helped me. It really, really helped me acknowledge how severe my social anxiety was. And, in January 2017, saying, okay, I'm going to get out of my house every single day now. And I'm going to go outside. Our downtown Las Vegas was just developing. And synchronistically, all the month of January 2017, Kelly Bennett, who's the marketer for Vegination, was hosting these conscious workshops inside of the restaurant every day. So I was like, oh my gosh, I get to go to these workshops every day. And I was super vulnerable, saying, I want to get a hold of my social anxiety. I have a problem. I'm Brittany and I'm addicted to social media, or I have social anxiety. And just that, it's like the bearing, it's like the taking off of all your clothes and the revealing of your heart. And the more that you're able to do that, the more that you're able to witness this part of yourself that it's like you haven't felt in a long time, or you haven't seen in a long time. And it is just, it's like, that's when those layers start to come off for the first time, when we didn't even know that we were comprised of layers, right? Oh, Hannah, I think maybe your mic's not on.
Oh, sorry. I love what you just said, because I feel like what came up for me, it's cracking us open, right? When we're standing in our truth and we're like, you know what, let me embody this right now. Let me stop with the illusion. Let me stop with the self-deceit, with what it should look like or should be, but just be like fully there, present with ourselves, embodied in our truth of what is right now in this present moment. I feel like it cracks us open. And it's funny because, you know, we say, oh my gosh, you crack me up, as of like, oh, you make me laugh at this point. But actually, yesterday I was watching this movie, Little Nemo, which is like from the 80s. I've never seen it before. And oh, no, it wasn't actually Little Nemo. Never mind. It was The Jungle Book. We were watching The Jungle Book. And I didn't realize that, but Baloo was starting to cry when Bagheera was thinking that he was dead, and he would like give this beautiful funeral speech about how amazing Baloo is. And Baloo was just like crying and sobbing, and he was saying, "You're cracking me up, Bagheera. You're cracking me up." And I thought, that's the true origin of when we say you're cracking me up. And I love that, because it's that, you know, that rock bottom that we have to feel, and like just like that cracking open of the shell, because that's how we grow, right? When you were talking about planting the seed, Khadaura, where it's like we're planting the seed first, but then in order for it to sprout, it needs to crack open. And as long as we don't crack up, we will always stay under the soil and we will never blossom.
To me, that has so much to do with the inner child. And that's why I feel like a lot of people that I've come into contact with, including myself, is, especially in this community of natural and spiritual beings, is that so many people suppressed it when they were a kid. And it's like, as we were saying, like, people are older now, like we're in our 30s and our late 20s and 40s. People are like, oh my goodness, it's too late. And I'm like, it's not too late. Everything that you've done up until this point is still a part of that journey, because it added to the experiences of what you're sharing, because no one has the journey that you have. But I 100% agree with you that I believe people are planting these seeds, and some people are waiting for there to be this like super divine sign. And for me, I'm big on like spiritual bypassing, and I'll literally be looking at someone and it's like, so what's it going to look like? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, how do you know it hasn't already happened? Like, how do you know that you not taking this step forward isn't what's supposed to be the big sign? And I've met so many people that I feel have this tunnel vision of like, nope, it's got to be 11:11. I need to see like 3 crows fly. I need to have like someone call me on FaceTime at the same time. And Haley's comment has to come back before I start doing this thing. And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, some of the things that you just said, I think only happen every couple 75 or 100 years. So it's like, I'm always telling people that, you know, we're in co-creation with the universe, God, source, creator, whomever you believe in. And a part of the co-creation is sometimes we get to take the first step. And the first step is obviously awareness, but it's like, and taking the first step. I'm big on celebration. So I'm always like, celebrate everything. Even like we said with the viewers, like I celebrate hardcore on like the things that some people might consider little. And I do that because I did learn that the universe doesn't know the difference between a big win and a small win. It only sees like that level of energy. So it's like, I celebrate waking up. I'm like, I'm awake. I was like, my heart's beating. I was like, I'm breathing, cool. And as you were talking about the social anxiety, something I learned to do is from Jim Quick is to create 3 to 4 things that I need to do before I'm allowed to use my phone. So for me, it's meditation, cold shower, and then I'll pick something else, or journaling. So I have to journal when I wake up. I have to take my cold shower, and I have to meditate where I can even look at my phone. And that has actually really helped me take a step back from always feeling like I always need my phone, because as an entrepreneur, the FOMO comes up a lot, like, oh, I got to go check what's going on. What's the newest trend? And the newest thing that I'm working on is this letting go of feeling that I have to check the message because of the little symbol. So a friend of mine sent me a screenshot and had like over 100 unchecked iMessages and like a ton of FaceTime things that were unchecked. And I was like, how do you not check them? And they're like, I just don't check them. I was like, what? It's like the moment I see that there's one unchecked thing on any of these things, I go look at it because I'm like, who is it from? So I've kind of stepped back from feeling this need that I have to respond to everyone in the moment by just allowing myself to be more present. And this is why I started taking more walks in the city. Uh, and it's like I put my phone in sleep mode so much more now in the day. Like it's in sleep mode now, so that I don't even know what's going on because I can't even receive the notifications. So for anyone out there that might be suffering with social anxiety, at least if you have an iPhone, don't just put it in like the sleep mode, put it in bedtime mode, and it just blocks out everything. And I will do that and just go about my day. And then when I come back to, I celebrate because my phone's like, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And I'm like, yay, for that moment.
Totally, yes. I love airplane mode. That's what my phone is usually in. And or not usually, I should say, but often whenever I'm like, okay, cool. Now is no phone time. And especially at night too. I get actually kind of mad at my husband whenever he has his phone right next to his nightstand and it's on and I'm like, what are you doing? The radiation while we're sleeping. But you know, one of those things. But it's yeah, it's so important and I love that. And I would love to also touch more. I know we've been talking a lot about, you know, self-mastery and embodiment, but I would love to talk more about your past too, because I feel like it's so fascinating, your life story and how you were in the military for like 14 years. And I mean, talk about mastery in the, I mean, military is like such strong discipline and focus. And like, I feel like Capricorn energy of like full on. So can you share us a little bit about your experiences during that time and how you transitioned to now, you know, offering your natural being coaching?
Yeah. So, and it's always interesting because I have like this weird dynamic. So it was like I grew up in Asia, so I learned like all these Eastern philosophies, grew up with mystics and stuff like that. And then I joined the military, and people were like, why would you have joined the military if you grew up with mystics? And I was like, well, there's like two aspects to that journey. A lot of people, when they see like the mystics and the monks, they just know about the people that are just praying every day and all of this peace and stuff. And I was like, well, there's another side because this universe is about polarity. So, you know, where there's poison, there's always a cure. Where there are the peaceful people, there are also going to be warriors that protect those areas. So I was so focused and devoted to wanting to be a samurai. And my master, one of my masters, was like, well, the samurai don't really exist anymore. If you want to experience this code of Bushido, you have to find something similar. So I thought, I'll join the military. And I thought, you know, why not protect my country? Obviously, as we were talking about earlier, it's kind of like all the labels don't really, they're not really what you think they're going to be. So, you know, that world was crazy. I went to war. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan. I've done the things that people would probably not be able to sleep at night and witness such crazy stuff. And after doing that for 14 years, I had amassed enough knowledge to train my body to be a warrior. And what it was for me, it was learning. And I reached this phase where I felt like an utter monster and I was shaming myself. And I was like, now how do I switch that? And as someone that studied alchemy, it's like, I'll transmute the monster into the guardian. Because I do understand how people will say like only light can combat the darkness. And I don't fully believe that. I believe that sometimes dark must be met with dark. I was like, so if I'm able to be at this level of darkness, not that darkness is bad, I can help protect more because I have those experiences where I won't hesitate in the darkness, where I know some of my friends that are light could not do the things that I've done if it were to happen now. As I transition out, it was the journey of like coming back to myself and allowing myself to let go of all of this traumatic PTSD and things like that. And as I started to let go, this is where I learned that lesson of responsibility and accountability. I blamed the military and other people for all the things that I had to do or the things that I experienced. And I had a moment where I was about to walk into the forest, and spirit was like, you need to forgive yourself. And I realized at that point, after about 14, 16 years, I never ever forgave myself. And because I never did that, I wasn't able to let go. So as I was walking, I was like, you know what? I forgive myself for holding on to all this energy. I signed the contract. I pulled the trigger. I did those things. No one ever forced me to do that. And I did it to survive. And as I started to see that, I started to see all of the people that I had been around in those environments, the people that are no longer here. And there was a spirit that was like, wait, I never blamed you. Like, I was trying to protect myself too. You just happened to come out on top. And then I started to see even more spirits. And it just really released this weight that I had been carrying of realizing I really just needed to forgive myself. I was expecting forgiveness from everyone else. And if I need to move forward and forgiving myself, so it's like, okay. So then it became the aspect of, now that I've worked through that, what is it that still, like, it doesn't resonate with me? And for me, it was the word spiritual, because I was in some clubhouse rooms, and just in general, I always hear people saying like, oh, this is spiritual, or I'm more spiritual than these people, or I'm a super empath. And I was like, I feel like everyone's putting these things on a pedestal. And I was like, it really started to get to me, because I'm like, everyone's, technically an empath, and we're all spiritual. And I was telling a friend, I'm like, spiritual just means of the spirit, which means everything is spiritual. So to say you're spiritual is on what you're saying. So I really stopped using that word, and embracing and working more with people in the LGBTQIA plus community. That kind of shifted me away from even the word divine feminine and divine masculine, because I have friends that were like, I don't identify with that. So I shifted the word feminine to creation and flow, and masculine to navigation and force, so that it would be inclusive to everyone, regardless of gender and things like that. And then I was just like, you know what? I feel like we're all just natural beings. So I was like, all right, natural being. All of this stuff is natural. Nothing to me is like spiritual on a pedestal. And at a conference, someone was like, explain that in one sentence. And I was like, well, when trees talk to each other, it's natural to you. When you talk to a tree, you say it's spiritual. Why do you do that? And the person was like, and I said, true. I was like, when you go out into nature and you're with Gaia, you call it a spiritual experience, but all this stuff is naturally happening even when you're not out there. So why isn't that you won't say that the alpine trees talking to each other is spiritual? And they were like, and I was like, see, I was like, I don't want to put it on a pedestal anymore. So that's just this evolution of me bringing into this natural being of being like, let these experiences be natural. I personally choose to avoid putting them on a pedestal. That way I'm not like creating all this separation of experiences. It's just this beautiful flow.
And that just reminded me of our very first episode of Sacred Sister podcast, where we say, what is a spiritual person? And we're basically talking about exactly that, where we're all spiritual. We're all spiritual beings, and I love that, that you bring awareness to those labels, because again, they are words, and words can be interpreted in so many different ways by different people. And whatever their traumas is with that particular word, it's going to get triggered when you use that word, and I don't think that there's necessarily a certain words that are bad or certain words that are good, but rather like, okay, which one is the word that you feel is the most embodied in your truth, and not the word that is maybe being used by a lot of people. Just because they use it doesn't mean you have to use it. You can make up your own word, or you can choose your own words, or find like the origin of the word. I love doing that when I have like a word and I'm like, that sounds interesting. What's the origin of it? And I Google it, and then like actually coming to like to the core, getting to the core of it, and then realizing, oh, that's what it's really about, what we're saying here. So yeah, I love that. And it's again about that self-mastery of really getting to that point of, okay, I'm accountable for the words that I speak, but also we can't control other people's reactions to them. And if they have certain traumas in regards to these words, then they're going to get triggered by them. But then it's also good. And we talked about this before here in this episode too. Sometimes we are meant to be the trigger. And
with love.
And that helps other people to crack open, so Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my greatest lessons, is that I may be the villain in a lot of people's stories, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because that's their story. And the things that I say and the things that I do, I literally do them with unconditional love, and I don't do them to intentionally ever hurt anyone. I'm just speaking my own truth from my own experiences, and I love just being in that flow of just being like, you know what, I'm just wanting to share. And when we were speaking about labels, the reason why it really got to me is because when I was in South America, I was around a lot of people that do yoga. And in the beginning, everyone was saying why they love doing yoga. Like, I love teaching people this art and getting people to release more. And then there was a moment later, I think it was the next day, where somebody was like, oh, I'm RYT 200. And somebody was like, oh, well, I'm RYT 400. And then another person, it was the tone and the energy when he said, well, I'm RYT 700. I was like, what's the difference? He's like, well, I have more hours, so I know more than both of them. And then I watched the energy shift among those three people, and they actually weren't hanging out with each other anymore. And I thought that's interesting that all of you initially said you were here to be of service, and yet you've let the amount of hours that you've spent in training dictate that you no longer want to be around each other. And I was like, ah. And I've seen it with people saying super empaths. So I felt that a lot of people, including myself at one point, it was like, I felt like, oh, I'm spiritual, I need to do these specific things. So it's like I would go to the crystal shop and be like, let me make sure I get a quartz, an amethyst, and get some sage, and get some Palo Santo. And it's like I went to a crystal shop recently, and I was very proud of myself because I walked in and was like, I don't really feel like I need anything, because they're all tools to amplify, but everything's within me. I can embody the same properties of the crystal, and it also still helps amplify, and it teaches me things. So it was nice to step back to be like, I don't need anything from this shop. And if I choose to buy something, it's because I'm consciously buying it. It's a mutual thing between myself and the crystal. And it's not so that someone will come into my room or my house and be like, oh, Khadaura must be spiritual because Khadaura has the tapestry behind them, burning the sage. So like, I'm glad to avoid that appearance. Like, even as a mystic, I've had people that be like, you don't look like a mystic. And I asked someone once, I said, what do you do? She's like, I'm a financial advisor. I'm like, well, you don't look like a financial advisor. And she's just like, oh, and I'm like, doesn't feel good, does it? And I was like, you don't have to look a certain way to be, spiritual or natural. I was like, it's just people will know it in the way you speak and the energy you give off. They will always feel those things way before. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just so enamored by this whole conversation, and I love how much we've talked about the constructs, and I love, Khadaura, how it just seems like you have this really innate ability within you to bear witness to the construct and make the construct very, very plain to see. I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful gift. When you were saying they asked you to say that in one sentence, in my mind, I was like, oh, he's probably going to be kind of thwarted and be like, kind of like, oh, how do I make such a complex? And then you just say something that's like literally 7 words or something. And I was like, oh, it's just so beautiful. And that really leads me to want to inquire more deeply. You're telling us a little bit about your past, and I just am so curious what you were like as a young boy. Like, when did you start feeling, sorry, I just want to tail on to that. Just like, when did you start feeling these stirrings? Because it's obvious that your spirit incarnated into this body with such a massive mission and so powerfully. I'm just so curious when you really started getting these notions when you were younger, like what it really looked like for you.
I was about 12 when everything got real, like, niche down and serious. Before then, I would like see things, feel things, I just didn't know. And in the environment that I grew up in with the family, I couldn't speak about it because they were like very, very religious and Baptist. And like going to church, I was like, no one else sees what I'm seeing in here right now. I'm like, all right. I was like, all right, cool. And I was like, I'm not going to say anything because, it's shunned upon to be like, no one else sees that spirit. Because I didn't want to be the person that was like possessed by the devil. But when I was 12, things got louder, and we were living in Japan, and some things happened. And one of the people that lived in the area was a mystic, and people were talking about how I was the kid that saw this thing that no one else saw. And he was like, if you could see that and no one else could, then you're gifted or different or whatever it may be, more natural for you. That master was the first one to start to teach me things. And from there, it just became this evolution of like, where I feel that a lot of people that I know are, is where we do feel alone in those experiences because you don't know who you can share them with. And I learned that once I started to actually embody it and not fear being able to see these natural occurrences, that's when I started attracting more people that are like me. To where someone was like, did you ever feel weird? And I was like, all the time. And I said, for those of you who don't know, the origin of the word weird, it's Germanic. It comes from the word weird, which means fate. So yeah, I felt like I was seeing my fate. And weird also means unearthly. So I love being weird and I embrace being weird. And I'm blessed that I was able to start that journey at such a young age and to have the support that I had moving forward into my adulthood versus some people that I have met that are experiencing it now. And it's like a huge thing because it's like, I haven't known this for the last 30 years. And it's like, now I feel alone. And it's like, you may feel alone and you're not. Like, as soon as you start to fully embrace it, yes, you're going to lose friends. You may even lose your family. And that's what I learned. But that was okay for me. Like, I realized that my spirit chose to incarnate through this being at this time period, knowing that I may have to step away from these people so that I can be of service in a higher capacity. Because I will not let, my mother and father and siblings, less than 10 people keep me from being able to impact millions of people. I'd be a huge disservice to myself. And it's the constant reminder. It's like, is there anything that I know I really, really need to say that I'm not saying because of how other people will take it? And if there's something that comes up, I literally just go make a video about it. I make videos in the moment. I'm like, oh, this is something I might not want to say. And I'm like, hey, everyone, what's going on? I no longer like using the word spiritual. From now on, natural being. And that's where the natural being came from. I literally was like, I don't want to use the word spiritual anymore. And I made a post about it. And I was like, I'm just going to keep doing that, doing the uncomfortable thing in the moment, just to be like, that actually wasn't that bad. And then other people reached out being like, oh, I hate using the word spiritual. And I'm like, oh, I'm not alone. Yes. Attracting the tribe.
I love how you just go online and be like, I'm going to make a video about this. I love that. That's inspiring.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do too. I never know what's about to fly out of my mouth, but there's an energy that really wants to be released out of me. And it's fascinating to witness. I really, really love it. That's cool.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful episode. Thank you so much, Khadaura. I feel like we can talk about this for
All day.
hours and hours all day.
All day.
But we're coming to an end, and we want to thank you so much for being here with us. And also, before we're going to close it all up, we have 3 sacred questions that we ask each of our guests, and you can just answer it in a short format. So are you ready?
Am I answering one after another, or you're asking all 3 at once?
One after another.
Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna start?
Oh, I'm gonna start. Okay. Yeah. I'll start. What does sacred mean to you?
Sacred to me means anything that I cherish in life and kind of gives me purpose. So for me, sacred is the earth. Gaia is sacred to me. Therefore, I will do what I can to protect and continue to work with Gaia.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. And who is a sacred sister or brother to you? And what does it mean to have one?
A sacred sister to me is someone named Kendra that impacted my life that's no longer here. Kendra is the reason why I celebrate so much joy, because that's how she always was. And when she was no longer here physically, I learned to embody that more in realizing that inner child plays a large role in my life.
Beautiful. And what is something that you turn something mundane and normal into something sacred and magical?
Something that I've done in my life, I would say just for me, just being myself. I felt that I was mundane in the military, and doing this thing that didn't really resonate with me for a while. And I made it more sacred by embodying everything that I truly feel and just speaking my truths all the time.
Beautiful. And now you're helping others to embody their truth and speak from their heart. And so can you share a little bit about the programs that you're offering and your coaching?
Awesome. So I work with one-on-one clients and groups, basically getting people to tap more into their own personal life story. I've learned that anything that's going on in our spiritual or natural life and our business life always ties back to the personal life. So it's like diving deeper into your own story, working through it so that when you do speak, you're speaking from not just the heart-centered space, you're speaking from your spirit space, you're speaking from the energetic space. And I believe that's what causes the true amplification. And none of that begins until you're willing to take the first step forward, because that's what creates momentum. So I'm here to be the catalyst that creates that momentum after awareness.
And so they can find your work on your website. And we're going to we have all the website links and your Instagram and everything in the description. And so is there anything that is upcoming that you want to let people know about?
Nothing really upcoming. I literally live truly in the moment. I'm not one of those people that's like, in June, we're running this thing. I'm just like, hey, like whenever you want to start, we'll start. Unconditional time for me.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
And it's awesome because, you know, that's your embodiment of your truth. And sometimes we can, you know, see other people that have their whole year planned out. And for me, I'm like the same way. I'm just like flowing with it and feeling into it. And then seeing other people planning out their whole year, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, respect to you, but I couldn't do it for myself. It's not my truth. You know, and it's just recognizing that there is no right or wrong way of going about life. There's just like, is it true to yourself? Is it true to your heart?
I saw too many people get stressed over launches, and I was like, I'm just going to do stuff as it comes up. And I don't ever want to be at that level of stress. So
Totally. Yeah. The elusive launch. For everyone that's tuning into this right now, we really want to extend so much love and so much warmth, so much, love to you. Thank you so much for joining us here in this episode today. And we hope that you will, if it's resonant for you, connect more deeply with Khadaura. Khadaura, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for following those whispers, for following those breadcrumbs, for answering the call in a way that only you can. We're so honored to have you here on this podcast today, and we look forward to seeing everyone in another 2 weeks.
Yes, and Britt and I are going to hop onto our Patreon now, and we're going to share a little bit more about our own personal stories and thoughts and feelings about self-mastery. So we hope to see you there. And yeah, thank you all for this. This was so much fun. Thank you, Khadaura. Yay, celebration.
Yay, thanks for having me. Celebration dance. Woo.
We'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.